Welcome back. Welcome back, everybody, to Beauty of Politics. I'm Dr. Laurie Pressley, and we have our producer, Laurie Bartlett, with us right now. And that was a powerful, powerful video of the constitutional rights that were violated in Arkansas and across multiple small businesses here in the United States. So online we have the owner of Mountain Pure Water, Mr. John Stacks. Can you hear us, John?
Yes, I can.
Wow, what a powerful video. And I just want to say hats off and thank you for you guys getting out there, telling the truth. And the truth is power, and the truth does set us free. And what you've done is really stepped it up and you know, telling everybody what occurred. So thank you for being with us.
Yes, thank you.
I'm glad to be with you.
Can you kind of step back to the very beginning of the story, you know, what your day was like, and just kind of walk us through it?
Well, I'll try to. I wasn't there at the plant when it first started, but my son was, who was the manager of of our bottling plant. And it started early that morning at a little after 8 o'clock, and I didn't learn of the incident until sometime after lunch, when an actual insurance agent had actually seen that the building was barricaded off and had lots of officers and guns, and he had called us to tell us or inquire, thinking that there had been some type of a shooting or homicides or something extreme of that nature because of the number of law officers and having the facility cordoned off.
So you had, nobody had any way to contact you. They didn't allow contacting you, okay?
No, they had severed the phone lines and gathered up all of the cell phones and had people in different offices and located in different areas. So no one had any way of getting any communication in or out of the facility.
They physically severed the phone lines?
Yes.
That's frightening. Okay, go ahead.
Well, and then, of course, when I naturally started trying to call and couldn't get them, well, then I was alarmed. I work at a small bank a little bit away from there, and I called my middle son, who's an attorney, and told him what little I knew and asked him to meet me there. And so we drove down, which was about 45 minutes away, and he and I got there at the same time. And when we drove up, there was, of course, 7 or 8 law officers there in front of the building, and that's when our confrontation started. They told us that we couldn't be there, we didn't have any rights to be there, we needed to leave, and of course we didn't leave.
Mr. Stacks, when you say law officers, were these local law enforcement officials or federal, state?
These were all federal officials. These were Department of Justice and IRS Law Enforcement Division. It was not any local enforcement whatsoever.
Mr. Stacks, how many hours did they detain your employees beyond their will?
They detained them starting a little after 8 o'clock at that morning, and it was almost 10 o'clock that night before they released the people in the facility back to us.
Were they allowed to call home?
They were not allowed to make any calls or make any contacts. Sometime later in the afternoon, they then told people that they could leave, but they could not come back. This is after they had already questioned them and sequestered them for a long period of time.
What were they questioning them about?
They were trying to find out, well, apparently this raid come as a result of a FEMA loan that we got about 4 years ago. We had an F3 tornado to come through where I live and to destroy my home, and also my shop, buildings, and outside things where we worked and built equipment for our bottling plant. And as a result of that, we were qualified for a FEMA loan, and I emphasize loan, not a grant. And they apparently were looking for paperwork that was connected with that loan that we had with the FEMA department, SBA.
Now, had you heard prior to this from FEMA or the SBA on any concerns over this loan?
Yes, ma'am. Probably about a year before that, they had contacted us, being FEMA SBA, and said they had lost the files. Would we send them a copy of the files? We said, yes, we'll be happy to. So we're talking about, a lot of paperwork, but we sent them to them. And we sent this paperwork to them FedEx with signed receipt. A couple of weeks went by, and they called us back and said, we haven't received your paperwork. We told them the party's name that signed for it, and a day or two went by then, and they said, we don't have anyone that we can find with that name. We need you to send them again. And we said, okay, we will, but we need you to find out what happened to all the paperwork we sent. It's confidential information. So the second time we sent the information to them, we had an elderly lady that worked for us, and we set out all the paperwork for her to copy and send to them. She thought they were copies, and she sent all of her originals. But again, we sent them with FedEx overnight receipt to sign for. And as it's hard to believe, but again, a few weeks go by and they call us and say, well, we didn't get your paperwork. Did you send it? And we said, yes, we did. Here's the second person that signed on the second time. And they said, okay, we'll find that person. A few more days go by and they call back and say, well, we can't find that person or your paperwork. You need to send them again. And that's when we discovered that we had sent them the originals the second time. They proceeded on to call us and send us a letter or two saying we had to send them copies of the original documentation, and we continued to tell them we can't send you what we don't have.
So Mr. Stacks, so you're telling us that you were raided because FEMA couldn't find the paperwork.
That is correct.
Basically, and I think this is an absolute atrocity that this happens every day. People lose paperwork, for whatever reason, the humanness of all of us, and your company gets raided with 40 to 50 federal agents, and they detain your employees, shut your operations down for over 14 hours. This is over the top. It's absolutely over the top. And, were you ever charged with anything, Mr. Stacks?
No, I haven't, and
Yeah.
We've not been charged with anything. And of course, as a co-owner of a small bank here in Arkansas, naturally we get checked out all the time by the FBI. So we have a very good background. I've been on school board here, just went off not long ago for 10 years, and I consider myself, while I have my own flaws, I consider myself to be a good citizen. And when things happen of this nature, you have such a cloud and such a scar that's put upon you that's hard to get off.
I understand that. I mean, I'm a small business owner here in Austin, Texas, and I could not imagine the impact that this would have on my company. So tell me a little bit about the losses that you've incurred, not only financial, but also personal and kind of reputation-wise. Can you talk a little bit about that? Well,
certainly I can. It's sad because, people sometimes when they see law officers and see things of this nature, they naturally assume you must be guilty of something.
Right.
But we actually had suppliers to call us and say, we don't know what you did, but we don't want to do business with you. You need to go somewhere else to get your supplies. People through all different sectors, both in suppliers and even in the financial aspects, said to us, we're not sure we want to do business with you. You raise so many questions that our board or our group or our buyers or sellers just don't want to do business with you.
What recourse do you have?
Well, I'm not sure, honestly, what we have. All we know to do is try to work hard and correct this. And, it put me in shock and put my sons in shock and with this situation in our own family to see what had happened like this. So it took us a little while to come to our senses, and that's when we finally decided that we had to do something regardless of what they might do to us or other retaliations, but we had to try to get this message out. And as a result of that, there was just a short part on the news, one of the news channels, and when they run this news station, we got many, many calls around the country from people that had been raided that seen the news article. And as I talked to them, though, the sad part was that 95% or some high percentage of them didn't want to be involved and wouldn't mention their name just because they were so afraid of the retaliation, and because they treat them so harsh and they manhandle them and pull guns on them and things of this nature. So they really are afraid, the vast majority of them, to come forward.
I want to go back just a little bit when they were holding your employees hostage, which
That's what it is.
They were holding them hostage, and this might sound kind of silly, but were they fed? Were they taken care of? Did any of these employees, your employees, have medical problems that this could have put them in the hospital? Did anything of that nature happen?
It didn't, but it certainly could have. They didn't let anyone, go get food. They wouldn't bring any food into people. They wouldn't let them call any family members. There was people supposed to went pick their kids up at different times during the day, and they wouldn't let them go pick up kids. Just a whole host of things. And
well, what would have, Mr. Stacks, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what do you think would have happened? Did anybody try to leave and anybody try to walk out and say, you don't have the right to detain me, I'm not being charged with a crime, and this is actually kidnapping? So did anybody try to bow up a little bit and say, no, I'm not tolerating this, and they try to leave?
We had 2 or 3 people that did, but they were, again, have had hands on guns, and they come in with guns drawn in my son's office. They had everyone so scared and afraid. When they first come in, an actual depiction of the gentleman pushed him by the throat and the neck against the wall.
You're kidding.
They weren't easygoing. They were screaming, hollering. They had everyone, many people actually in tears even. And so it's just the tyranny and the scare tactics about it. And someone needs to be held accountable for this.
That's right.
Well, let's talk about your local sheriff's department. Where were they?
Well, our local sheriff's department was blocking the traffic for them, and so they could make their fast entrance. I think we were told from people that viewed, they actually went up the street and held up the traffic and held up at the traffic light so that all these 47 or so federal agents could make their fast arrival in on a surprise notice, and then the county law enforcement people served as a blockade for the driveways, keeping everyone in or out.
So they enabled this raid to happen, and so they knew about it. They knew that they were there for 14 hours, detaining citizens that vote for the sheriff of that county. It's Pulaski County. Did I say it correctly? Pulaski County in Arkansas. And, the last I knew, the sheriff of our counties is the last resort against tyranny of our federal government. And so this sheriff, I think it's Sheriff Holliday, was missing in action.
Doc Holliday.
Well, whatever. So we called his office today, and our producer talked with the sheriff's office. You want to relay what the sheriff's office told us?
Yeah, it was real interesting. My initial call, a young woman named Diana spoke with me, and she said she had not heard of this. She had heard of some kind of incident a long time ago. And so when I told her the date was January 18th of 2012, which wasn't that long ago, she quickly remembered and then said that it was an IRS issue. And I said, well, no, it wasn't actually an IRS issue. From what I understand, you blocked off the streets and allowed hostages to be taken. And she had, the only comment she said was to call the IRS, and that we didn't know what we were talking about.
And so we never got the sheriff to make a statement. So his office refused to make a statement.
Other than call the IRS.
Other than just, push it off on a federal agency that has no accountability, apparently. And, I think this is the really sad part of this story, Mr. Stacks, is that the county sheriff had the power, has the duty to protect the citizens, the voters of that county, and he was asleep at the switch. And I want to just get the message out that sheriff needs to be replaced. I'm hoping at the next election that the citizens realize they are not protected by this man. And I just...
What do the citizens in your area think about
this? Are they
this?
angry about what happened to you? I mean, you have so many... How many employees were detained? What were the numbers?
Oh, there was probably about 35 employees.
About 35. So each one of those have family members. They have brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers, aunts and uncles, and I'm sure... I looked at your town, and there's about, I think, 400,000 people in your county, or in your town, and... the word had to get out. I'm sure that they're not happy with what happened. What's the perception right now?
Well, I think because there was such little publicity on the situation that 90% of the people don't know about it.
Wow.
And I think that's
amazing.
Other than the one news article that was run. And I think the even sadder issue about all of this, though, is that from all the people that called me, apparently most sheriffs around the country think that the federal government has the total control, and they have no control or no say-so, because it's happened in so many places. It's continuing to happen, last week and this past week at different places. And again, all those local counties are sitting back, letting the federal people call all the shots as if they have no say-so.
Well, and that's wrong, because the Constitution doesn't say you can just follow it or not. It is our Constitution. It is there to protect us from this type of tyranny, from this kind of government. And those sheriffs are our last resort, and they better be stepping up. Someone needs to educate them on what their responsibilities are, and if not, replace them. Get them out of there and put someone in who actually has some power and has some courage, I would say.
Mr. Stacks, why do you think that in a town that's your size that you had only one news article written?
Well, all I know is what I was told. One of the reporters that was involved, and I talked to him a few days later, and told me that they really wasn't allowed to run these articles, from their understanding, because of anything that's under a current investigation from Justice Department or IRS. They are not allowed to make that make that public about such an ongoing investigation when it's of that nature.
So I guess free
Don't know if
speech is
that's
also
true or legal or
suspended
not.
there also. So I guess free speech is also suspended for the media.
Well, it appears to be that way.
Wow, this is terrifying. I tell you, people should be furious about this. Absolutely livid, furious, and not taking it. So, Mr. Stacks, are you considering filing a federal lawsuit?
Yes, we are. It's
Good.
just a matter of however, this and other just business issues we've had, it doesn't allow us to have the type of monetary needs that we need in order to do one. It's, as you know, when you get into hiring lawyers and things, it takes a lot of money, and that's our biggest problem now is whether we have enough money to really take on the U.S. government. We're going to take on in some facet for sure, but our hopes that enough people would see that. I know that we have a lot of good people in this country and a lot of good congressmen and senators, but as Mr. Coleman pointed out, those people have an obligation, not just a responsibility, to get to the bottom of some of these things and to prevent it from happening again.
Well, I know you had mentioned on the phone earlier today that a gentleman, I believe you said from Iowa, had phoned you, and he had been in business a very long time.
Yes, he called me last night and was just rated last week. Been in business almost 40 years.
Where is he located?
He's in Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
Can you tell us a little bit about his story?
Well, he's happy to tell it himself, but the things that he told me was that they come in and raid his business with 35 or 40 agents, all of them with guns, and literally scared everyone, separated everyone, started interrogating everyone, wouldn't let anyone leave, gathered up cell phones, disconnected phone lines, and then even more so, they went in and wiped out his checking account, took all of his money where he couldn't even do payroll to those 70 employees, and just left him devastated. He's, as we were a few months ago, just in total, as he would say, it's so very bizarre and so extreme, it just makes it unbelievable.
It is. It's really unbelievable.
And what about Duncan?
Well, and with Mr. Duncan, the same way, too. They came into Mr. Duncan and took all of his money of his account, and again, they tell the bank that where they pull the money from that you're not allowed to tell this customer we've got his money. So it's as if then he's going to be left out there writing insufficient checks when he thinks he has money in the account.
Now, did they deplete your accounts as well?
No, they didn't on mine, and they simply because we primarily use a sweep account. So we just, the way our accounting works, we don't really have any excess or extra money there every day. It almost zeroes out every day.
That's really, way to go on that one. Well, I'll tell you what, Mr. Stacks, I think you're an absolute, one of the most bravest men that I have ever known, and for you to stand up to this, with it occurring over and over all across the country, none of us are safe, all of us are at risk, and I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you're doing, for making the reenactment video, doing that, getting the word out. And you are an absolute hero. We have to tell the truth. Our forefathers knew that the truth carries so much power. And I'll tell you one thing, and this goes to what you just said about your newspaper not, and the news media in your city not wanting to get this out. They know how powerful the truth is. So the more we tell it, the more this thing will not occur. And so we have to get it out as much as possible and get people to tell the story.
And we have to, because this going on, there will be major incidents. There will be
Yes.
death. There will be people shot by doing this type of thing. To think about them coming and busting in my son's office and putting a loaded .44 caliber pistol at his head with a finger next to the trigger, that has to have somebody accountable for such an action.
Absolutely.
Never a more mild and meek manner than this particular son of mine, and this is just not right. And again, somebody needs to be held accountable for this,
Yes.
regardless of what the consequences are to me or someone else.
Now, did you talk to your local sheriff's department?
I've called them 2 or 3 times, but they've never returned my call.
You've got to be kidding.
No, I'm not kidding.
And
I don't
that
live in
same
the
day
county.
you called them?
I'm sorry.
The same day that this occurred, did you
No,
try
I
to
called
contact?
them. I called them a few days after that, maybe even 2 or 3 weeks after that.
Well,
It just put me in shock for a period of time. I really didn't know what to do for a few
I'm
days.
sure.
And it's kind of ironic. I had just went in, because we were getting these letters telling us they might foreclose on us from FEMA, SBA. I had went and seen my congressman here locally in Little Rock, and he's been very helpful, Congressman Tim Griffin. But we had just went and seen him the day before, and he said, "I think, Mr. Stacks, I have this handled. This is a joke of how that you treat them." And I would emphasize, we've never been a day late on a payment.
Right.
Never a day late in the 4 years. But he said, "I think we've got this taken care of. I hope that you won't hear any more from them." And then the next morning we get raided.
wow. Well, I'll tell you
So
what.
that just shows that they're just defying congressmen and
Yes.
people of this position as if they have no one that they have to be accountable to.
Why do you think they targeted you and others?
Is there a common thread, do you think? Is it political? What do you think? What's your best thinking?
Well, I think it's monetary is one thing because of the money they can gain, but I think that they're just targeting small and middle-sized business. That it's just a bullying tactic. I'm not sure what the overall thing is or not. I actually run as a Democrat years ago for a state representative. Today, naturally, I'll be honest, I'd certainly run as a Republican if I run for something. But I don't know if it's, my just being in our local community, I'm not that much of an outspoken person.
Yeah.
But I do make my views known, and I'm certainly not happy with this administration, or certainly not happy with Mr. Holder with what he does to defy Congress. But I wouldn't think that my views would ever be made known too much more out of our local area here. But there has to be something to the bottom line to find out why they would go to this extreme methods and manners to come in on us. And I would even add that my executive vice president's been with me 20 years. And after 9/11 happened, he went out and joined the reserves. And every weekend he works for a county as a deputy sheriff, just because of his feeling for this country. They treated him as bad or worse than everybody else. He asked 3 times, "You either need to get an attorney in here, or you need to do something. You can't do this. You've got to either read them their rights, or you've got to let these people go." And they laughed at him and said, "Why don't you call somebody?" And this is after they confiscated his phone and took his gun and separated the lines. It's like a joke or playing some game.
Right.
And again, I can't tell you the serious nature of what it is and how, again, someone needs to have to be held accountable for this.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's like they have a recipe that they're following, because you hear your story, you hear Duncan's story, you hear Gibson's story, now you hear the guy from Iowa. It's a recipe that they're following. So it is like a mode of operation that they're following. And I think at some point you're going to get a good old boy who says, "I'm not going to sit here," and he's going to get up and get out, and they may shoot him. And I pray it doesn't come to that. But I'll tell you what, you're going to get some people that are not going to put up with this. So many people have said, I'd rather die standing up than be a slave on my knees or live on my knees. And you're going to get somebody like that at some point. If this is a consistent recipe, they're going to get somebody like that.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. And, again, this is going on by the hundreds and hundreds this year. It's there's so many people that have called me and told me this has happened to them. And again, they did such a great job of exactly what they wanted to them. They have scared them so badly. Every one of them says, "I'm having nightmares. I can't sleep. My wife hasn't slept now." And all these major issues from the amount of scare tactics and the tyranny. And it's not just about 4 or 5 people here that's been raided. It's literally about hundreds, if not a few thousand, in the last 2 years.
Wow, that's really very telling. That's very
we
telling.
want to look deeper into this.
We do. We do.
And so certainly,
And it takes the bravery that you're exhibiting, sir, to get this out. And I'll tell you what, we cannot be ruled by fear, even though it's an emotion that we all experience and that we are driven by if we let it drive us. But fear doesn't get us where we need to be. So we have to rise up, which is what you've done. And that's why I think you're incredibly brave and courageous. And my hats go off to you, and I really appreciate what you're doing.
Well, and I really appreciate these other two gentlemen that was willing to be in the documentary, and the gentleman from Iowa that called me that's willing to be public. And hopefully, with a few of us going public, the rest of them or many more of the others will come public as well.
That's right. We just need some scouts out there.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they will. And I really appreciate you for taking the time to bring this to the public's attention.
Well, thank you for being willing to talk about it.
Yep. Thank you so much for being on Beauty of Politics. This hour went by so quickly.
By very quickly.
And would you like to say just anything else to the public before we say goodnight?
Well, I think they need to explore this. I think they need to go on the website and look at it and call and do verification, not to take my word or someone else's, but to check it out for themselves, because their business could be the next one that's hit tomorrow morning or the next morning. Someone today got raided, someone tomorrow will get raided in the U.S.
Right.
There are several people in a day. So this could, you may think that it doesn't affect me, but the reality is it will affect you, or it will affect your neighbor, or you might be working somewhere. So it's one of the things that unless it stops, it's going to affect many, many of us.
What website? Can you tell us what website, and we'll post that?
Yes, the website is www.rampantinjustice.com.
Okay. It was a beautiful video. They did a great job.
It was very professional. It's awesome. Yeah.
Well, good. Thank you. A lot of credit needs to be given to the people. There were several business people that put together funds to help pay for getting it done, and for Jan Morgan for her time and effort that she spent in doing this. So I have to give a lot of credit to them, because without them we couldn't have got it done.
Well, thank them for us as well. I mean,
Okay.
a beautiful job.
It was a wonderful job. And I tell you, if we don't hang together, we're going to hang separately. I'm a small
You're
business
right.
owner too, and this would just be. I feel what you said about your suppliers and all of that affects your business, and that is really sad to me. I just want you to hang in there and you stick it out, and we're all gonna be doing the right thing, and we're here to have your back, Mr. Stacks.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's an amazing story.
And so we're going to be following. We need to talk to
Follow
more
up.
people. We need to talk to more people, get this out, and get this out as much as possible. With what he's saying, hundreds and thousands of businesses being impacted like this, we can't have that.
When he was talking about some of the business owners' families just not being able to sleep, and just the physical damage that they're doing
Right.
along with the monetary damage, that is a horrible thing to be happening in our country today.
Yes, it is absolute tyranny. It is. But I do want to say that we have to rise above that fear. We have to get up there
Absolutely.
and say, you know what? We're here to do the right thing. We're here to protect each other, and it's a difficult thing to step up. But I'll tell you what, somebody is going to get up and say, I'm not going to sit here with your gun on me, and if you want me, you're going to shoot me while I'm walking out this door. It's going to take somebody to do that. Because I'll tell you what, it's an option.
Well, it is an option.
It's an option.
Well, and so for those of you that are listening, I think it's just real important that you do go to the website and get involved. You might not have a small business today, but you might in 10 years, or this might happen to your family. And so as Americans, we need to stand united, whatever party affiliation we are.
That's right.
This
crosses all boundaries.
This crosses all boundaries,
Yes.
and it is tyranny, and we need to stand together. And I think Mr. Stacks, with the intestinal fortitude that he's exhibited, that we really need to get behind him and
Absolutely.
help him through.
And I tell you what, if he's going to file a lawsuit, we may do some fundraising here in Austin to help him.
I'm for that.
And I'm all for that. And you have to have your lead group out there helping with a lawsuit, and because that's really the only language that these guys understand. For some reason, our Constitution is being eroded day on day on day, and it's like it doesn't exist anymore, and that just, we can't have that. And the legal, our justice system is one way to approach it and to fight this tyranny. And I think we should help him and raise some money. We'll keep in touch.
And you know, I'm really going to suggest that you ask your kids, teenagers, to watch this, because their generation is next.
That's right.
And the more that we allow this to happen, it's going to be easier inside of their generation, and they're actually going to just let it happen, and pretty soon we won't have a country. It's really that simple.
That's right. Yeah.
So anyway,
Truth is power.
Truth is power. Do we want to close out with any election news? Do we have any data yet?
Oh, wow. You know, I think, you know, in Austin, we have about 1 minute left. In Austin, and everybody will, you know, get more information later on tonight, but Austin, Travis County was down 63,000 voters compared to 2008. And in addition to that, there were 15,000 new voters with no voting history that voted for the first time in this election. So really, we're down about 80,000 voters from last time. So I think that's an interesting statistic. People are not as optimistic as they were in 2008. So we'll see where the results land.
It'll be interesting.
It'll be interesting.
We need to, this is the end of this segment for this evening, and we want to thank you for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you next Tuesday on The Beauty of Politics.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Laura Pressley.
I'm Laurie Bartlett saying good night.
Thank you.